Hebrews chapter 10. He does away with the old covenant in order to establish the new covenant. Hebrews chapter 10 concludes this section of the letter, focusing on Christ as the high priest. This chapter further compares the sacrifices of the old covenant with the new covenant sacrifice of Jesus. The author emphasizes that animal sacrifices could not take away sins, and then underscores the effectiveness of Christ's sacrifice of himself. This chapter also encourages perseverance in faith, and warns against the grave consequences of willful sin. Exegesis by sections and verses. Verses 1 to 18. Christ's sacrifice once for all. The author argues that the law, with its repetitive sacrifices, was a shadow of the good things to come, not the true form of these realities. Those sacrifices could never make perfect those who draw near. The author then refers to Psalm 40 to illustrate that God was not pleased with sacrifices and offerings but desired obedience. Christ's coming to do God's will, and offering his body, once for all, in contrast to the priests who were required to offer sacrifices daily. By his single offering, he has perfected for all time those who are being sanctified. The Holy Spirit also bears witness to this new covenant, where sins and lawless deeds are remembered no more. Verses 19 to 25. The full assurance of faith. The author encourages believers to draw near to God with a true heart in full assurance of faith. Because Jesus has opened a new and living way through his body, believers are exhorted to hold fast to their confession without wavering. They are commanded to stir up one another to love and good works, and to not neglect gathering together. Verses 26 to 31. A warning against deliberate sin. This section contains a severe warning. If believers deliberately continue to sin after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for their sins, but a fearful expectation of judgment. The author compares this with the harsh penalty under the law of Moses, and reminds believers of the vengeance of the living God. Verses 32 to 39. Recall the former days. The author encourages believers to remember their earlier experiences of suffering for the faith and urges them to endure, to preserve their souls. The author expresses his confidence in the believers, that they are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls. Overall summary. Hebrews chapter 10 emphasizes the superiority and sufficiency of the once-for-all sacrifice of Jesus, in contrast to the repetitive and ineffective sacrifices of the Old Covenant. The chapter reiterates the completeness of Christ's work and encourages believers to approach God with full assurance of faith. A stern warning against deliberate sin emphasizes the gravity of disobedience in the New Covenant. The chapter ends with an exhortation to endurance and perseverance in faith, underscoring the believer's position in the promises of God.